Hello, and welcome to the session on all of society engagement, accelerating the implementation of the Sendai Framework for the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction. My name is Eric from UNDRR, and today we have an excellent lineup. I want to thank our presenters. We have the contribution of Roy-Shin Jordan from the Alliance Manchester Business School. We also have Luis Carvalho from the Municipality of Amadora, and Eden Sasson from the Climate Policy Initiative. Last but not least, we have our very own Yuki Matsuoka from UNDRR. Thank you again. We are delighted to have you with us in this session. And without further ado, let us start with the introductory presentation by Yuki Matsuoka. Yuki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eric. So I'm sharing my screen. So again, my name is Yuki Matsuoka. I'm head of the UNDRR office in Japan. My office, UNDRR office in Japan, is the global focal point, global coordinator for this initiative, Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment Initiative within the UNDRR. So that's why we are coordinating this session. Then we also administer the online platform for the Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment. Within my presentation, I'm going to share three things: why we are doing this Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment Initiative, and what Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment Platform, VC platform, can do. And then we'd like to share some analyses about the voluntary commitments. So firstly, why? The Voluntary Commitments Initiative originally started in response to the General Assembly resolution of the United Nations leading up to the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in March 2015 for supporting the development of partnerships on disaster risk reduction. Then following up to the adoption of the Sendai Framework itself, which emphasized the shared responsibility of stakeholders for disaster risk reduction, United Nations GA resolution adopted in 2015 called for specific and then time-bound voluntary commitments by stakeholders at local, national, regional, and then global levels to support the Sendai Framework implementation. Then the same resolution requested UNDRR to publicize these commitments. Therefore, this voluntary commitment online platform itself is to deliver the mandate given by the General Assembly to UNDRR. This is the online platform. This online platform for voluntary commitment is one of the tools for UNDRR to deliver its mandate for advocating for all of society engagement and then shared responsibilities which are enshrined in the Sendai Framework. Of course, as you know, Sendai Monitor is for the national government. UN Plan of Action is for the UN agencies. Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative is for the local governments. Then this Sendai Framework online platform is designed for the stakeholders' use. This is part of the accountability mechanisms for the Sendai Framework implementation. Only organizations, institutional entities can submit voluntary commitments, not individual persons. All the stakeholders, such as civil society organization, private sector, academia, local governments, media mentioned in the Sendai Framework, can submit voluntary commitments in the Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment Online Platform, BC platform. For submitting voluntary commitments, our main focal point for the voluntary commitment needs to do the submission on behalf of her or his entity. So now I'd like to share what we can do by using the VC platform. Stakeholders, through this VC platform, stakeholders working on DRR can submit their commitments to share their work with the international community. They can share progress and then achievements, deliverables, and then raise visibility of their achievements. Stakeholders can learn from each other from published voluntary commitments. They have also opportunities to have their achievement highlighted within the platform as well. Of course, UNDRR can take stock of these initiatives and activities to support the implementation of the Sendai Framework by non-state actors. We can monitor the progress and then know who are doing what and where. We can utilize submitted data for analysis. We can regularly update the public regarding good practices, achievements, and then also we can motivate stakeholders. Then public, they can utilize search functions to know who are doing what and where. They can also do notification setting according to their interest. They can search what other stakeholders are doing in a similar areas in the same countries, for example. Information sharing and then search functions are also expected to foster potential collaboration among stakeholders. They can also see analysis report as well to know trends and then gaps. So this is actually my favorite section. If you go to this section, this commitment section, you can see all the commitments with the symbolic photos they have submitted. So you can see so many stakeholders around the world are really making progress to support the implementation of the Sendai Framework. To sign in the Sendai Framework voluntary commitment, you can use the same credentials for your prevention web login. And then this one, top left, this is an example of how published commitment looks. Voluntary commitment life cycle itself has 5 steps: sign in, complete profile, fill in and submit voluntary commitments, fill in and submit voluntary commitments. They also submit progress report and then deliverables as the outcome, evidence of this deliverable. And then organizations with published voluntary commitments can use this BC special logo. And then once a voluntary commitment is published, we disseminate them through UNDRR social media, relevant mailing list. Your events and specific activities can be also highlighted in relation to your voluntary commitments by Prevention Web, Sendai Framework, voluntary commitment notification system. So a lot of values, merits for stakeholders who are successfully publishing their voluntary commitments. So the commitments page allows to search among commitments, organizations, geographic information, themes, hazards, Sendai Framework priorities, indicators, and then also SDGs as well. Users can also see results by regions and then countries, territories. Then as of just a couple of days ago, we have published 93 voluntary commitments, which have committed more than 400 deliverables. And then these 93 voluntary commitments are being jointly implemented by nearly 600 organizations in collaboration. Not actually, almost all the voluntary commitments are being implemented in collaborative manner, which is quite a great fact we have identified out of these 93 voluntary commitments. At the end of this year, we are aiming at reaching 100 voluntary commitments. So let me share some analyses. Yes, so we launched this VC online platform in December 2018, and then the first synthesis and then analysis report was launched in May 2019 during the G Global Platform held in 2019, which was just 5 months after the launch of the platform itself. Therefore, the number of published voluntary commitment was limited at that time. However, it was quite useful to see what kind of analysis we could do by analyzing these these voluntary commitments in future to see some trends and then gaps by doing the similar analysis in future. So we have done some regional distributions as well. We have also done some analysis among SDGs distributions, Sendai Framework priority distributions, indicators distributions, and then also types of organizations as well. We also did some connection analysis as well in order to explore some collaboration and then also to increase synergy. So for the second report to be launched in 2022, by using 100 voluntary commitments, we can enhance further our analysis, including connectivity analysis, possibly country-specific analysis as well. This is actually this analysis is as of March 2021. As you see, nearly 60%, actually more than 60% of the published voluntary commitments are from Asia. Therefore, having this session for the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction, we really like to encourage partners, stakeholders in the region of Europe to consider submitting your initiatives as a voluntary commitments to this online platform of the Sendai Framework voluntary commitment. Then we have three speakers today to share their initiatives. I just wanted to share how voluntary commitments looks on the platform. Of course, they are going to share the details, so I don't go into details, but their initiatives looks like this on the VC platform. So as I said, we really like to encourage stakeholders in this region to consider submitting voluntary commitments to the VC platform. And then we have various materials to guide you to submit voluntary commitments to this platform. So all informations are available on the platform, and then also our team, Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment team within the UNDRR office in Japan are happy to support anytime. So please contact us anytime by this email, and then also please visit the Voluntary Commitment online platform itself. Thank you. So over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Yuki, for the great introduction. Certainly you can go to the URL or type Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitments, and you will find a link to the platform. Thank you again. Now we give way to the next presentation, and it's Roy Shin. She's the main focal point for the voluntary commitment, recovery, renewal, resilience, informing, supporting, and developing guidance for local resilience. We are very happy to count with your presentation, Roy Shin. So looking forward to it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I just confirm you can see my slides and everything?
Yes.
Excellent.
Super.
Thank you so much, Eric, for the introduction. And also thank you, Yuki, Eric, and colleagues for your kind invitation to speak about our voluntary commitment today. So I work at the University of Manchester, and I'm a member of the interdisciplinary team working on recovery, renewal, resilience, developing guidance for local resilience project. So today, I'd like to take you briefly through some of the key aspects of the project, which you can find more detail on our voluntary commitment on the SFVC platform. So this is an ongoing project running until June 2022. So we continue to learn from different people and places on their experiences of COVID-19 and other disasters. So this infographic gives a broad overview of activities and outputs of the project to date. And today I'm going to focus on two key aspects. So the international standard, which is ISO 22393, and also lessons from the Manchester briefing. And these lessons that I bring today have been informed by initiatives from across the world that have been shared on the SFVC platform. Recovery and renewal from COVID in particular will involve all of society because everyone has been affected to some extent, and also whole system because every organisation, service and function has been affected also. So to begin, I'd like to briefly share some of the work of the project. So we've been doing a lot of work in the UK to understand what response to COVID has looked like, what recovery involves, and also thinking about what renewal opportunities there are. We've been working at the local, the national level, and also working internationally with a number of partners. We've been capturing lessons from across the world through interviews with resilience experts, which have both contributed to recovery guidelines and also developing the Manchester briefing. So the Manchester briefing brings together international lessons for recovery and renewal. So many of which, as I mentioned, have been informed by resilience initiatives that can be found on the SFVC platform. And I'll take you through a couple of those examples a little bit later. The briefing is distributed to around 64,000 people currently. We're on issue 44, which has over 600 lessons on recovery and renewal from 100 countries. So all of our work so far has brought together information to inform an international standard. So our team have worked on this standard with the international standards community. It was recently published in August and is based on recovery guidance that's available in the UK, but also across the world. So our team looked at that recovery guidance. We also looked at local recovery plans across the world, the literature that's available on recovery. And we also talked with a lot of people, including a range of experts internationally throughout the project, which is sponsored by the ESRC. So our team have also participated in multiple recovery coordination groups in local authorities in the UK. And we've also broadened that work with a range of international partners as well. And all of the knowledge and the experience that we've learned from those excellent recovery coordination groups and discussions have been brought together in this standard. So as I mentioned, the standard was recently published in August. It's available on the International Standards website, but it's also freely available on the British Standards Institution website also. So ISO 22393 covers a whole range of different phases. So the first phase is focused on agreeing the concepts, and here we talk about three distinct aspects. So recovery, which are short-term transactional activities, and renewal, which is strategic transformation, both of which are focused on building the resilience of our communities and our places to this changing environment and the various risks that we face. Phase 2 talks about setting up an RCG. So these are the groups that we were following during response and recovery to COVID. And we were learning about how these groups are developed. So the membership, the terms of reference, the resources, and all of this information is contained within the ISO, which are a set of prescriptive guidelines as to how organizations can develop their own RCG. So phase 3 then begins to think about how you can begin to assess the impacts and needs of communities, which can be within 6 topics. The ISO very much places people at the heart of what has been affected, which is certainly the case in COVID, but also every crisis and every emergency. We see the centrality of people, as well as the places where people live, and also the processes that those people engage with. Then the next phase, so phase 4, moves into thinking about these really important impacts. So how we can recover those really important impacts through some very quick short-term transactional activities. Phase 5 then looks at how we develop renewal strategies. And these are strategies that address the underlying socioeconomic conditions and causes of risk that render communities unevenly vulnerable to hazardous events. Then phase 6 looks at how we learn lessons and how we might do things differently as a result. So here I've given you a really, really quick overview of ISO 22393. But as I mentioned, the full ISO and the full standard is available for free through the British Standards Institute, but also the ISO website as well. So next, you will see the Recovery and Renewal Framework. So this framework underpins the ISO, but also the Manchester Briefing, and very much prevents an all hazards whole system framework to support those who are developing recovery and renewal strategies. I previously talked about the 6 topics in phase 2 of the ISO that support assessing impacts and needs. So these topics are informed by this framework, which is under continuous development, as we continue to learn from different people and different places on who and what needs to be recovered and renewed, and also identifying the systems that need to be in place so that we can enable this. As I mentioned, the framework is under continuous development. So some slight differences that you'll see from the previous slide in phase 2 will be that humanitarian assistance appears here as communities. And also we have the inclusion of health as a standalone theme. So this very much reflects the emergent lessons of the last 18 months, given the importance of health with respect to our resilience to emergencies. So next, I'm going to take you through some lessons that have been shared through the Manchester Briefing. And these specific lessons have been inspired and informed by the excellent voluntary commitments that have been shared through the SFVC platform. A core element of our thinking in the Manchester Briefing, which aligns closely with that of the spirit of the SFVC platform, is that we can learn from each other. You can be in Manchester, for example, and you can learn from Argentina. You can be in Canada and you can learn from Chile. And the briefing is very much driven by sharing lessons from contexts that maybe previously we might not have considered in terms of what we can learn from each other when it comes to identifying and reducing risk, understanding changes to vulnerability, enhancing the preparedness of our communities and leveraging their agency, and really bringing these lessons into a shared space. So the first lesson is from Italy and considers approaches to strengthen inclusive resilience to disasters at local levels. And this lesson recognises that risks and increases in disaster impact are felt far more intensely at the local level. The second lesson here is based on work in Nepal and also work of the Africa Youth Advisory Board on DRR. Focused on the role of young people, this work highlights the importance of supporting young people as agents of change and improving their visibility of their work, promoting their inclusion and also active participation in DRR. The third lesson here is a voluntary commitment by the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, which is a transformational initiative that aims to develop locally led, co-designed regional resilience strategies. And all of these initiatives can be found on the BC platform. All of these individual lessons can be found on our database and also through the Manchester briefing. We do continue to develop and share learning through the Manchester briefing on a monthly basis, and you can sign up to receive that directly as well. So finally, I would like to briefly introduce a new renewal initiative in the UK, and this is called the National Consortium for Societal Resilience, UK+. The response and recovery to COVID has been a all and whole of society effort where every individual, community group, business and organisation has had a role to play. And maintaining this goodwill, this collaborative and partnership working would be critical for renewal. And renewed efforts on building resilience can also ensure a positive legacy from the pandemic that creates a more risk-aware and prepared society. The NCSR Plus involves 61 member organisations. Local government alone represents over 96% of the UK population, and also 12 sector partners who amplify the voices from whole of society. The vision of the members of the NCSR Plus is to enhance the UK Plus's whole of society approach to resilience, so that individuals, community groups, businesses and organisations can all play a meaningful part in building the resilience of our society. Much of the work and the early work of this initiative will include developing a shared understanding of whole of society resilience, identifying the principles that should underpin an approach, a whole of society approach, and also sharing good practice examples of local resilience strategies. And without a doubt, the SFBC platform and the innovative local initiatives that are shared on this platform can offer knowledge, inspiration and best practice examples from across the world. And an initiative such as the NCSR Plus can take inspiration, but also share into this community and into this shared space where we can collaborate and learn from each other. The platform is an excellent opportunity to share the work that's happening across the world and how different people in different places are contributing to local resilience and the Sendai Framework. So thank you so much for listening. You can explore much more about our project via the voluntary commitment on the SFBC platform, our website, database, and also the NCSR Plus. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roisin, and that is a wonderful presentation. We can tell there is plenty of efforts behind your work. We also appreciate that you mentioned the benefits, some of the benefits of the platform to learn from each other. For us, having your commitment in the platform is also important because we are sure many people are learning from your commitment as well. So thank you again. We will have thanks. We will have the questions at the end. So I'm going to go to the next presentation. This is Luis Miguel Carvalho from the Municipality of Amadora. He is the main focal point of the commitment Strengthen Leadership, Cooperation and Participation in Disaster Risk Reduction in the Municipality of Amadora. Luis, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eric. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, very well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I will share our experience about leadership cooperation in Amadora and how when we joined the platform about the voluntary commitment of Sendai Framework. I will start with very snapshot about Amadora. We have almost 200,000 inhabitants regarding the last census. Amadora is a city with highest population density in the country, more than 7,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. We belong to the Lisbon district in the Lisbon metropolitan area. We have almost 3% people living in slums, and our unemployment rate is 50%. Well, we joined the campaign, the Make Cities Resilient campaign in 2010. Was a very interesting experience. We joined since the beginning, and after we joined the campaign in that time, the mayor defined a strategy to put on the fields and just to have the expectation to join all the local stakeholders. Well, this strategy was based on the local campaign team. The mayor just create a team just to increase engagement and information sharing about different stakeholders. The mayor tell to the municipal service just to join and to share all the information that will be available to the strategy, just to have this municipal service on board. Hence, we want just to convince them to join all the stakeholders that we have on the community. We have, for example, in our local campaign, local authorities, local communities, private sector, schools, municipality, and ONG that support all the local team. Well, we have, during the last 10 years of work, we involved more than 60 stakeholders. We publish a lot of scientific articles in the international journals and publication. We attend more than 20 UNDR events. We have a specific program to the schools and to local stakeholders about the awareness about disaster risk reduction. We had, for example, in the last decade, more than 1,000 sessions done. We have, for example, some volunteer projects, the Senior Academy and Youth Red Cross, that was the winner of Sasaka Award in 2017. And finally, we had on the last 10 years 4 projects co-financed by the European Union. So this leads us to, for example, the coordination of working group of the resilient cities on the national platform. Amadora, I think, is a very interesting position right now, looking for the work that we did during the last decade. So that means that we have a strong commitment from everyone. We are an inspiration for others, and we have a local, national, international recognition. This is some photos about our dialogues, about our webinars that we are doing right now, just to collect information, to build our strategy. It's always important just to put the information on the table, join the people, to have a conversation about how we can improve our standards on resilience. So, for example, the school committee are very strong focus of our strategy, because we know that the schools is the place where we can get better results and where we can just bring more fresh ideas about this. Well, about why we joined the platform in 2011, we have some reasons. The first one, I think, is important just to ensure a political, technical, and operational commitment to achieve better results. And we want just to highlight the importance of contingency and immersive planning. It was very important just to understand that the active citizen participation is the key of the results and the key of success about the resilience strategy in the community. So we have this point about the need to encourage more active citizen participation and better risk communication, public awareness. And finally, one of the things that is related with the risk communication is the local early warning system. So this is the 3 biggest reasons that why we joined the platform 2 years ago, just to bring this commitment about the political, technical, and operational. Well, we established some deliverables and progress reports. So one of the first delivery is about awareness sessions. We know that it's important just to bring the people for the process. We know that we have the local stakeholders, but bring the people, the small groups of people, small groups, if we have here, small groups of neighborhoods, just to have voice on the disaster risk reduction. The second one was about the early warning system. Amadora have a warning system, so it's not very high developed or with a very huge expression. So we want with this commitment just to bring this system for the people. And finally, the workshops for local authorities was very important just to empower the local authorities just to bring more capacity to the recovery, to the rescue and the prevention. So in resume, we want just to ensure that the community is prepared to face the city risks. We want just to ensure that the community receive information about hazards, risk and warning and from the civil protection. And finally, ensure better articulation and collaboration between all entities. Well, these deliveries and progress report on the platform allow us just to set a timetable. I think it's important just to put pressure on the local authorities just to have a delivery time on the commitments. However, as we know, the COVID pandemic has severely limited the deadlines and the process of interaction between partners. Well, these some, as I told you, some pictures about the sessions that we have with all the stakeholders. And finally, it's important just to understand what we gain with this platform. I think it's not just have a commitment on the platform. I think you want just to have some action on the fields, and that's our goal, in fact. This is, for example, some pictures about all the interaction that we have based on the commitment that we established. The first gain, I think, that the municipality conducted a lot of workshops for local authorities in the version of webinar, for example, regarding the pandemic. So, and these workshops are important just to conciliate the plans, the methodologies, just to think about learning sessions in the way for example, for the school programs and community training. The second point, I think, is we gain a lot of projection. Amadora is, I think, one of the unique city in Portugal that are on the platform. And this, I think, is important just to project our city in the international, national context. And making commitments is always a political gain. The third point is there is a prestation that Amadora has been committed to bringing the discussion for they are at local level. So we have a lot of discussions about disaster risk reduction, about this resilience, and that's, I think, the better gain, just to have people on the table and have a conversation about this. Finally, the results. As we know, we want just good results. The commitments made are intended just to ensure our maturity. As I told you, Amadora joined the campaign, the Make Cities Resilient, in 2010. So this was very interesting just to understand our evolution on the campaign. And this commitment is just to prove that Amadora is in the right track. And the results is just to understand our level of maturity. So the commitments are for that in real, just to understand if our resilience strategy is correct, if we have to improve some points, and just to bring the disaster risk reduction to the political, operational, and technical agenda. I think that's the most important that we have to work on. So this is my presentation. I left here some pictures about, as I told you, the webinars and the local stakeholders discussion, because I think that's the most important, is just to share with local stakeholders, as you told during the previous presentation, is all the most important is that the stakeholders on board in our commitments. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luis. That is a very detailed presentation, and I think this will also be very helpful for all the stakeholders in Europe, not only to understand the mechanics of the platform, but also the rationale behind. So very much appreciated. Among the reasons why we invite you is because your commitments, we believe, have quality output, and you also do a constant follow-up. So, we hope that showing these good examples will attract more commitments to the platform from Europe. As a matter of fact, when they ask us about examples of local governments, Yuki and I, the first thing that comes to our mind is Municipality of Amadora. So yeah, always happy to have you. Great, then I will go to the last presentation, and for that I'm going to share my screen, as Eden has kindly prepared the remarks in advance. He cannot join us today, but I will show you the video. Please let me know if there is some issues with the audio, but I think it will be all fine.
Thank you very much to the UNDRR team for having me. It's an honor to speak at such an important event, along with some of these other esteemed panelists. I apologize that I cannot be there today, but certainly hope that the information that I present will be useful, and you should really feel free to follow up in case I can provide any more information. So my name is Idan Sasson, and I'm a project coordinator with the Climate Policy Initiative and the city's Climate Finance Leadership Alliance based in London. I think it would be helpful for me to help contextualize this conversation in the broader scope of urban climate finance, and then point to some potential financing opportunities for climate resilience and disaster risk reduction. So I'll just briefly introduce Climate Policy Initiative and the city's Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. So for over 10 years, CPI has helped governments, businesses, financial institutions really focus on driving economic growth while also addressing climate change. And so in particularly, we look at climate finance opportunities and challenges around the world, and then try to bring together different innovative solutions to help address them. So since 2019, CPI has held the secretariat for the city's Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, which allows us to develop a greater focus on cities within this context. And for those who aren't familiar with the Alliance, it serves as the multi-level and multi-stakeholder coalition aimed at closing the investment gap for urban and subnational climate projects and infrastructure worldwide. Our members include more than 70 different public and private financial institutions, governments, international organizations, NGOs, different research groups, and different also city networks that represent most of the world's largest cities. So by taking part in the Alliance, but also by contributing their expertise, their access to networks and funding, these leaders commit to working together in order to bridge the supply and demand for sustainable and resilient development at the subnational level. And so through our commitment in the Sendai Framework, we're really keenly focused on how to bring about the finance needed in order to implement climate mitigation and adaptation ambitions. And so we see 4 key elements to supporting climate action at scale in cities. The first would be around preparing bankable projects at scale. There's certainly a dire need to expand project preparation support to cities to help them develop concrete pipelines of bankable projects. And these, in this context, can be adaptation projects or different planning projects that can really reduce disaster risk. But we also need to track urban climate flows in order to understand and address the different gaps and opportunities. We need to support innovation, particularly on financing options and approaches, but also on different investment solutions that can really help fill some of those critical gaps. But in order to really facilitate this, cities need to be prioritized at the national level. And we really need to emphasize and support enabling frameworks to facilitate that direct access to finance that cities need. And so we focus on these 4 critical pillars largely through our thematic action groups and through many of our different activities. I don't have time to go into all of it, but I can give some examples of our work. And so project preparation facilities, different pipeline builders, city networks, these are some of the most active members of the Alliance. And so we try to support their work in a number of different ways, but I can point to two here. So the first example would be the Green City Finance Directory. And this is an open directory that I encourage listeners to perhaps check out. But any city, project promoter, other stakeholder can visit our website and can filter through the different criteria in order to help find technical assistance or project preparation facility that could support their project. The user can filter by country, by sector, by type of support, but also by project stage. Another example would be some of our work that's focused on really kind of standardizing, but also minimizing the effort that cities have to go through in order to receive support. So through a collaborative process, Alliance members, including C40 City Finance Facility, CDP Matchmaker, ICLEI's Transformative Actions Program, and the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation now use a harmonized application form for their project selection process. So this form helps cities understand the relevant information needed for project support, but it can also reduce the time that they're spending on applications and really help encourage collaboration between different project preparation facilities. The next priority is on urban climate finance tracking. And so we're trying to understand what the financial flows today are going towards cities. And we think this is important for a number of different reasons. When compared with investment needs, track progress can really be a powerful motive for stakeholders to address the barriers that limit climate capital flows in cities. But tracking climate investment can also give us a clearer picture of what financial instruments are generally being employed. But this can also lead to better policy planning and can really target specific gaps by sector, mitigation versus adaptation, region, different sources of finance. So in order to put some figures on the progress and the need for urban climate finance, the Alliance, along with the expertise of Climate Policy Initiative and a partnership with the Atlantic Council Adrian Arch Rockefeller Center and World Bank, we recently released a comprehensive State of Cities Climate Finance. So this is a resulting diagram on the screen here, which presents a visual overview of urban climate finance flows from different sources all the way through to end uses. And this includes both tracked and estimated data that depicts the life cycle of annual investment flows between over 2017 and 2018. So an estimated total of $384 billion was invested in urban climate finance globally. And while in some regards this represents progress, it's far below the $1 to $5 trillion that we know is needed annually for urban climate smart infrastructure investment. And of that total $384 billion, we actually found that the largest proportion of finance was invested in East Asia and the Pacific region, largely driven by China, and in developed economies, particularly in Western Europe and North America. Now, it's important to emphasize that there are vastly insufficient amounts of urban climate finance being invested in crucial regions like South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, which saw an annual average investment of just $4 billion and USD $3 billion respectively. But how do we know that we're getting this investment right? So looking at what urban climate finance is currently being spent on, you can see large sums spent on mitigating in buildings and transport proportionate to their emissions contribution, but the largest sums of adaptation finance are actually on water management. So there's a clear divide between adaptation and mitigation finance. Finance for adaptation projects amounted to just $7 billion in 2017-2018. And this represents just 9% of investment tracked at the project level against 91% for mitigation and dual uses as well. So there's still a clear need to work towards a better balance between climate mitigation and adaptation or resilience actions in cities that would support disaster risk reduction. And this is, really at a pivotal moment. We know that economic losses from climate change related hazards are trending upwards. Just to give one example, the global insurance protection gap, which is the difference between the economic loss of a catastrophe and the amount that is covered by insurance, reached a record high of USD 1.4 trillion in 2020, with 3/4 of all natural catastrophe losses uninsured. And so this level of adaptation finance falls significantly short of a number of different estimates. The World Bank puts an estimated need of $11 to $20 billion annually by 2050 in cities and emerging and developing countries alone. And so there are a number of different issues in terms of actually, measuring climate finance, and adaptation is clearly flowing behind. But it is also important to think beyond these barriers. And so for this reason, we really also emphasize innovative finance. So, we recently looked towards successful and innovative approaches to utilizing insurance, for climate resilience in cities. And so we had a recent paper on building climate resilience in cities through insurance that really highlights the key role that the insurance sector can play in addressing urban climate risk and disaster risk reduction. And that, there are a number of different innovative approaches looking at working through different, provision of mechanisms like parametric insurance and risk pooling, in addition to other insurance-based financial mechanisms. We also work closely with the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance, which is also managed by Climate Policy Initiative. The lab is a global public-private sector initiative that really aims to drive billions of dollars of private investment into climate change mitigation and adaptation, particularly in developing countries. And the lab has mobilized over 50 different solutions and $2.5 billion US dollars, with 20 different instruments focused specifically on sustainable and resilient cities. Now, finally, we really see it as an imperative that cities are prioritized at the national level with a focus on enabling environments. And so to address this focus, the Alliance launched a knowledge product on enhancing the role of national development banks to scale finance for climate smart urban infrastructure. And so we developed 4 policy briefs out of this targeted towards key stakeholders that include national development banks, national government ministries, cities, different international financial institutions. So really thinking about the role of enabling frameworks and whether or not and how cities can be better prioritized within larger national and international conditions. And so now getting to the end of the presentation, I just really would like to make a point about, strong partnership. And so we are really in agreement with the Sendai Framework, which recognizes that the state has the primary responsibility to reduce disaster risk. But we really underline that shared responsibility of other stakeholders like local governments, the private sector, academia, civil society. We find that UNDRR's all of society approach is extremely helpful, but it could also have the potential to increase the impact of our work, to build synergy, to really improve effectiveness, but also accountability. And so we really encourage other stakeholders working on disaster risk reduction to make the connection to the Sendai Framework. I'd like to again thank the organizers and the fellow panelists. I really hope you have a productive discussion today. And the State of Cities Climate Finance Report, along with several other related knowledge products and resources, are all available on our website here. I hope you have a wonderful discussion. Take care.
Great. We appreciate Eden's presentation, contribution to this session. It's very nice that despite not being able to join us today, we can count with his inputs. So let's go to the final part of this session, which is going to be a moderated discussion. We have a couple of questions prepared for you, and also Yuki will have some questions. But also, whenever you feel like asking a question, Roisin to Luis or Luis to Roisin, please go ahead. And the first question is for Roisin, and by the updates that you have been submitting to your voluntary commitment on the platform, we can tell that the Manchester Business School, Alliance Manchester Business School, has been working with several partners and organizations, and that's really inspiring to see. Now, we were wondering from this experience, how this strengthening the collaboration with other stakeholders makes the academic work more relevant for society, but at the same time, perhaps it has better quality outputs for publication purposes. How do you see that?
Thank you so much for your question. It's an excellent question, and a key aspect of the work that we do. And I should have mentioned earlier, but Louis, has contributed so much to our project and has taken part in the interviews that we've done with resilience experts around the world. And in terms of, I suppose, that connection between academic work and the practitioner aspect of everything that we do, a core focal point is the knowledge and experience of resilience experts and practitioners, and even from volunteers down to right down to hyper-local initiatives that we have seen through the pandemic, have enabled us to learn about some of those capabilities that communities have that might not have been as visible previously. And essentially, you know, I suppose the from one aspect, the self-organization capabilities of communities, hyper-local groups, and these really informal parts of resilience capabilities on the community level, and really bringing as much information that we can into one shared space, and really to demonstrate that how, for example, you know, what we learned from Louis in Amadora can be helpful, relevant, and also share, you know, best practice examples into the UK and vice versa. And really it's focusing in on that. The work that we do is for the people that are on the ground and that are working, and it's this kind of, you know, almost feedback loop of knowledge, so that we can work at a pace that maybe has been required by the pandemic, by learning from those on the ground and live experiences of response and recovery, and being able to feed that into guidance that we can then share outward.
Wow, that is great. Thank you. Certainly, it's a lot of information to handle, to analyze, but also to disseminate. So, yes, thank you for giving us that idea. And then thinking about these kind of flows of knowledge and experiences, we were also wondering, in the case of Louis, how can academia can help you in terms of the work at the municipalities, because we believe that municipalities are at the front line of the work that we do for building more resilient societies. And we were wondering, since we have the participation of Roisin today, how do you see the academic world making your work more effective, or making your contributions more fruitful?
Thank you very much, Eric, for the question. I think it's vital for the process. I think academia, we had since the beginning, when we joined the campaign in 2010, the collaboration of two universities in Lisbon just help us to build and to do the first steps on the campaign. And for example, I give practical examples. They help us just with the methodologies about the Making Cities Resilient campaign, in order just to apply the 10 essentials when we joined. That was very useful for us, because I think the academia have the knowledge just to help us, have the know-how about this. There, for example, in Portugal, we have very good know-how about some institutions of the academia about disaster risk reduction. Portugal have a lot of experience, for example, on the forest fires. And so these kind of methodologies that bring us fresh ideas about how we can do better on the prevention, rescue, and the recovery. I think that their role is vital for the process. We collaborate, as we know, with Manchester on the peer review projects 2 years ago, and it was very interesting just the benefits that we have with the University of Manchester. They create a lot of information about the methodologies just to apply the peer review, and that was, for example, a very interesting point of view how the academia could bring for the process the capacity just to the front line, the cities, just to improve their standards and I think have a maturity of their work about resilience. So I think it's vital, the capacity and the work of the academy on this stage.
Thank you, Luis. If you allow me a brief follow-up, most of the times when we read the progress reports, we can identify that sometimes access to finance seems to be a challenge. And we wonder, what is your perspective in that regard, and how are you handling those issues in terms of access to finance?
I think it was, for example, for Amadora, a lesson learned, because when we joined the campaign, we didn't have any budget for this. We had, for example, a budget for specific situations because I'm leading the civil protection, and sometimes we just I think to have a specific budget for civil protection is not the same to have a specific budget for disaster risk reduction or for resilience. So after the 3 years of campaign, I think it was in 2014, we created a specific budget for the campaign. So we have a budget for disaster risk reduction, and that budget is for the initiatives and, for example, to have money to spend with academy, just to have projects, and it was very useful to have this capacity to look and to learn that we have a specific budget for the different departments, but it's not the same for have a specific finance to this kind of work, and that because we share a lot with our partners at the different cities that is important to have a specific budget for disaster risk reduction at local level, and that means that we have specific money just to spend with a lot of things, with projects, with just to have, for example, we spend a lot of money recently with our warning system. So this kind of work that we need money just to sometimes to collaborate with our stakeholders.
Wonderful. Thank you for the detailed answer. And so I know Yuki has also some questions for you. However, if you have any question for each other, you can just go ahead now.
No, we Amadora, I think, and Mr. as I told you, I think we collaborate a lot. We have we establish and we have a good relationship with the Manchester. We collaborate a lot with Unicity and with the Great Manchester. So that's very cool, because I think this learning between cities, I think is very important just to establish the future about resilient cities, and I think it's wonderful to have this kind of opportunity to have this relationship. And I think, for example, this commitment is about this, just to join and to get closer all the cities around the world. So that's cool.
Absolutely. I just to add to Louise, you've put it so beautifully. But I think most definitely there has been so much collaboration and the development of new partnerships, and very much a new kind of energy and appetite around, I suppose, working to build resilience together and moving away from, I suppose, more siloed working that might have been a tradition of the past. And really just pooling resources, knowledge, skills, so that we can all kind of, I suppose, support each other in progressing towards the development of resilience. But yeah, it's excellent.
Thank you so much. I can only now give way to Yuki. If you have any additional questions, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Roisin and Luis, again for your great presentation. And then also great moderation from my team member, Eric, as well. I have two questions to both of you. The first one is that, as we have mentioned during our presentation, we really need to increase the number of voluntary commitments from this region, Europe, in our platform. So if you have any advice in terms of how we can actually increase the submissions from the stakeholders in this region, that is the first question, if you could give us your advice. Then the second one is, as you may know, Sendai Framework adopted in March 2015, which is the global blueprint for 15 years. And then last year at the UN General Assembly, it was decided that we would conduct midterm review of the Sendai Framework towards 2023. This midterm review is not for the purpose of revising the Sendai Framework itself. Rather, this is for the purpose of assessing how achievement progress have been made and what will be the challenges to further implementation of the Sendai Framework. So from that perspective, reflected on what you have already achieved. If you have any your long-term kind of plan towards 2030 already, if you have, that would be very helpful for us to learn in relation to the midterm review perspective. So these two questions, if we could hear from both of you, that would be great. Maybe we should go Lois first, because
Sure.
we went to Louis first from the previous question.
So first question is, so if I'm correct, it's in terms of increasing submissions to the Sendai Framework. I think so for example, yeah, I mean, it's an incredible platform. I do think, and I mean, since being part of the platform, almost every day we can see additions, and there's new voluntary commitments. And what we would do, for example, is further share those through our own network, for example, and promote the work. So potentially, it's connecting with projects with each other. For example, I know that we've shared some of the work from Amadora, we've shared work from Italy, in terms of the different initiatives that are happening, and potentially it's creating a collaboration between some projects that might have a further output and a further platform that they can share benefits on. And I suppose to advocate massively for the platform, it really is such a huge opportunity for different initiatives and also organizations, and even hyper-local kind of informal voluntary groups, very much to amplify their work and showcase their work, and kind of develop this almost kind of ecosystem of people who are working together and contributing to moving towards a reduction of risk, a reduction of vulnerability, increasing our understanding of vulnerability. It's one of those things, but I think it's such an excellent platform, but potentially connecting different voluntary initiatives with each other that could potentially support each other in terms of promotion, etc. would be good. Shall I go with the second question, or Louis, do you want to come in on the first question first?
Yes, let's go to then Louis for the first question, and then we go back to Louis for the second question. Yeah.
Well, about our experience, I think the platform is very useful. I think it's our first thought about how we are we looking for the platform. So at local level, we have a very interesting expression of the useful of that platform. However, as I told you, in Portugal, we just have one city on the platform. So I think we need more visibility. That's one of the points, because some cities don't know anything about this platform, about commitments. We are trying just to put this thing about the platform on the next meeting of the national platform, just to show. I think if you have, a presentation, a PowerPoint, something that you can use and to get more visibility to the platform, I think would be useful. Because when I remember that when we launched the platform, we just share with our partners at national level, and we don't receive any feedback. So that's one point that we should just try to have more discussion about this, about the visibility and dissemination. I think two things that maybe we can improve, and because, for example, in our perspective, the platform and the commitments are mandatory for our local strategy until 2013. So this for us is absolutely vital, just to have the reports, the deliverables, but this is our perspective, Amadora perspective. So because if we don't do this as mandatory, anyone will look for their side. So in our proposal, the documents that we have on the platform are mandatory, but we need more cities just to take a look on this and just bring for the process.
Thank you very much. So let's go to Loisin again for the second question for your, long-term perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Would you mind repeating the question for me, Yuki? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because now we are going to have this midterm review of the Sendai Framework, and then we are now going to complete the first half of the Sendai Framework duration, right? And then now we are going to enter the second half of the Sendai Framework duration.
Mm-hmm.
So we are actually asking various stakeholders about what is your vision towards 2030, which is quite useful for us to think about this midterm review. So midterm review is not just looking actually in the past in terms of what we have achieved, as a whole, as a world. We are also thinking about towards 2030. So since you have already done a lot, so we wonder if you have any plan towards 2030, which you can share with us.
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit about, so in terms of the Recovery, Renewal, Resilience project, obviously there is a slight time limit in terms of that specific work, but there is a lot of work that is evolving from the work that we've been doing with various partners across the world. And one of those initiatives, for example, I touched on at the end of my presentation, which very much focuses on this longer term endeavor and this longer term aspect to recovery and renewal and contributing and achieving and working towards the Sendai Framework and the goals of that, and in terms of specific aspects that would be maybe important from that perspective in terms of those long-term goals, it would be and I suppose how we might measure that, or what we might see as positive impact, would be around a shift in how our partnerships on resilience are both formed and that kind of collaboration, and an increase in joint working, an increase in bottom up plus top down collaborations, and an almost combination of both of those. And generating, such as, for example, more knowledge sharing, so understanding more of what's happening across the world, and just as the framework does, bringing that into one space. So I suppose from the specific perspective of the project, fatigue is a big thing that is coming through in terms of those on the ground that have been working in response, recovery, and looking long term can sometimes feel quite daunting, considering how much work and how much pressure there has been over the last 18 months or close to 2 years at this point. I think small steps are key, and focused in around shifting relationships on resilience and in increasing our partnerships, increasing the visibility and diversity and inclusion of DRR is key. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you very much. Very useful. Yeah. So Luis, over to you.
Well, I think it's the same that Rosie told it, because I think this is a small step, this kind of commitments, and we need very small steps and a lot of steps just to achieve 2030. So I think this is the part of the big thing that's the end of the process. So we have more resilience committees. So I think, for example, this platform is very interesting on this kind of point of view, because this is a small step. So we need that to, maybe the platform should be have an upgrade and more discussion in the end of the year, just to understand what were the difficulties that we achieved during this couple of years. For example, the pandemic was very hard for us because, for example, to get to deliveries was very, very, very difficult to have all the progress report. But I think that is one tool that could help us to be better, to put pressure on the political side. For example, when we look, for example, what happened on the climate conference, we see that we need more conversation because we have a lot of challenges for the future. And if the cities are well prepared and have tools for do the work that we have to do, so we are available. For example, Amadora are available just to get some support on the thinking of maybe upgrade of the platform. But I think this is a small step. And we did this because we have different roads. We have the cities that are working a lot, and we have we have the road that we have cities that need help just to get on track. So, could be some thoughts that we can just thinking about, because I know that we have a lot of cities, for example, in Portugal, that are doing a lot of progress on this, but they are not be part of the commitment. So we want this. We want to bring them for the process and just join us. But in some part, we have just to show them the benefits of the platform. Otherwise, I think they don't look for this. So we are available just to share and maybe to have a conversation about this in the future.
Thank you very much. For those purposes, I think having for example, main focal point for voluntary commitments, which are regarded as good practices, that is very helpful. And then in the past, actually, Eric and myself organized a session towards You Inspire, which is actually youth scientist network. And then we did briefing, and then we also share some good practices from submitted voluntary commitments. And then they were encouraged to submit more. So that kind of a virtual briefing session, we will organize more, possibly next year. Then definitely we need great speakers like you guys. So please help us, to organize those types of the virtual events, because rather than actually we, talk about how important this VC platform is, actually talking from you, who are really using this platform will be powerful, influence to them who are considering submitting voluntary commitments. So thank you very much for your, answers to these two questions. Thank you. Eric, over to you.
Thank you. It sounds really good. I think there is a lot of knowledge, information that we are absorbing, but also homework to do. There is always margin for improvement. So thank you guys. We are running very good on time. So as the final item for the session is the closing remarks, and Yuki is going to help us sharing with us some closing remarks for today. Yuki, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So of course, first of all, I'd like to thank three excellent speakers who kindly shared your excellent work, your feedback towards the VC platform. And then, of course, as I have mentioned, during the discussion, I really like to request for your support to continue to share the value of publishing voluntary commitments on this SFVC platform. And then please join us to encourage other stakeholders to consider submitting their initiatives and then achievement in DRR as the voluntary commitments to the SFVC platform, so that, of course, international community will be more informed about stakeholders' excellent work, contribution to the Sendai implementation. And then, of course, this is also critical towards the midterm review of the Sendai Framework. And then at the Global Platform 2022, to be held in May 2022 in Indonesia as a hybrid conference, the second synthesis and an analysis report will be launched. So voluntary commitments to be published by the end of this year will be included in that report. So this means we really have to encourage our partners and then colleagues to submit by the end of this year. So then again, we need your help. So thank you very much again for your excellent presentations. And then we really hope that viewers of this session will be encouraged by our discussion, your great work to do their immediate actions to submit their initiatives as the voluntary commitments. So thank you very much for your participation in the presentation. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you. And with this, we come to the end of the session. I think we did very good timing. And just again, as Yuki said, thank you for your participation, and we look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.